Here's a question nobody wants to answer. How did Jews go from history's most persecuted minority to being threatened as the world's privileged oppressors almost overnight? No, seriously. One generation ago, Jews were the genocide victims. Today, Jews are too powerful to complain. That switch didn't happen naturally. It was engineered. Shalom, I'm Igal and this is Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Today we're talking about how white privilege and white guilt didn't just miss Jews, they rebranded Jews. And once that rebrand happened, hating Jews started looking like a moral courage. Where white privilege actually came from. White privilege didn't drop from the sky. It comes straight out of critical race theory developed in the 1970s and 1980s by academics like Derek Bell and later popularized by people like Robin DiAngelo. The original idea wasn't a TikTok slogan, it was a legal theory. CRT argued that racism wasn't just personal prejudice, but structural, embedded into laws, institutions, and power systems. So far, fine. But then it gets simplified, flattened, turned into a moral shortcut. The pitch becomes this. If you are white, you benefit automatically. If you are not, you are oppressed automatically. It's clean, it's catchy, and it collapses the moment Jewish history enters the room. Because Jews don't fit the model.
Wow.
We're not colonial conquerors. We are an ancient people who survived exile, genocide, and statelessness, and then rebuilt. CRT doesn't know what to do with that, so instead of adjusting the framework, it erases Jewish history. White guilt, the emotional tax. Then comes phase 2, guilt. Marx believed guilt would fracture the bourgeoisie, make them surrender power without a fight. Critical race theory borrows the same mechanism but swaps class for race. Same playbook. Confess, apologize, decenter yourself, step aside, give things up. Speech, legitimacy, authority. Guilt becomes a form of social currency. The more you signal it, the more moral you appear. The less you question it, the safer you are. And once guilt governs morality, facts stop mattering. Because guilt doesn't ask, is this true? Guilt asks, who's allowed to speak? And Jews? Oh, we don't fit neatly into the guilt hierarchy. The Jewish swap. This is where it turns ugly. Jews, historically expelled, ghettoized, hunted, massacred, exterminated, are suddenly rebranded as hyper-white. Not just white, super white. The ultimate beneficiaries of privilege. Why? Because the modern progressive worldview can't process a minority that survived oppression, rebuilt itself, gained sovereignty, and refuses to stay powerless. So Jewish success has to be reinterpreted as theft. Never mind the Mizrahi Jews expelled from Baghdad, Damascus, or Tehran, or Ethiopian Jews airlifted out of famine, or Holocaust survivors who arrived with nothing but trauma. None of that counts anymore. In the new moral math, Jews aren't judged by history, they're judged by outcome. If you're Jewish and successful, a doctor, a tech founder, a soldier, an Israeli, congratulations. You've just been recast as the new white oppressor. October 7 broke the mask. Let me explain this part simply. October 7 happens. Hamas murders 1,200 Jews. Families, babies, grandparents. The worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Now, here's what should have happened. The world sees innocent people murdered. The world sides with the victims. But here's what actually happened. The system paused, recalculated, and flipped the story. Why? Because in the white guilt worldview, victims are decided before facts. Jews don't qualify as victims anymore. Why? Because Jews are labeled privileged. And privileged people aren't allowed to suffer, only to be blamed. So instead of Jews were attacked, the narrative becomes What did Israel do to deserve this? That's the mask falling off. When Jews die, white guilt doesn't see victims, it sees a problem to explain away. So rape becomes context, murder becomes resistance, and terror gets rebranded as anger. That's why after October 7 you didn't see mass sympathy for Jews. You saw excuses. You saw justifications. You saw silence. Not because people didn't understand what happened, but because ideology wouldn't let them care. Why Israel has to be the villain? Here's the real problem. White guilt cannot tolerate Jewish agency. Agency breaks the script. If Jews are capable of defending themselves, building a state, winning wars, rescuing refugees, and thriving, then the entire oppressor-oppressed binary collapses. So Israel must be a settler colony. Palestinians must be the ultimate indigenous victim, with a total disregard of the fact that Jews legally purchased most land before 1948. Arab immigration surged because Zionist development created jobs. Even Churchill admitted Arab population growth followed Jewish industry. Facts don't survive guilt narratives, because guilt doesn't want complexity, it wants a villain. And Jews with sovereignty shatter the script. The Endgame. Once Jewish success is framed as stolen privilege, everything becomes permissible. Globalized Intifada becomes moral. Holocaust memorials get vandalized. Gaza Jews gets dismissed as political expression. And silence? Silence is praised as virtue. That's not progress. That's the oldest hatred in history, repackaged so people can feel enlightened while repeating it. White privilege isn't the sin. The sin is using it to make hating Jews feel righteous. Drop your thoughts in the comments, rate the episode, share and subscribe. And remember, guilt is a one-way street nobody should be forced to walk. I'm Igal, and this was Middle East in less than 5 minutes. Until next time, Shalom.